again, car and truck wrecks, we're talking about really injury claims.
Yes.
Which is what we do at Peary and Young. So we do have an email question that came in before the show. Let's go ahead and put that up. Okay. Says, my son was in a car accident, not his fault. We have come to the settlement stage and told that 2 checks will be issued, one for damages to the car and the other for lost wages, doctor bills, etc. How do we know what is being offered is fair? He was unable to work for a month due to injuries from the accident, and I had to take time off to take care of him. Do they account for that? And that's from Clark. Clark, great question. And it's a question that I think we probably hear just about every single day when people come in and they talk about car wrecks. You know, usually immediately the first thing is, how am I going to get around? I don't have a car.
And, and that's the easier part of this process.
Right. It's probably the most frustrating because it's right at the very beginning. You're dealing with no car, you're hurt, you're injured. There's a lot of things going on, and it's just one of those little extra things that's very frustrating, but it is pretty easy to handle.
Right.
But then as time sets in, now you're talking about missing time from work, having to have medical care. What's the advice for Clark?
Well, let's first, on that first step, on the property damage, you're going to get an estimate that's going to itemize out how that thing is being detailed, what they're taking into account, how they factored it, assuming we're having a repair issue. If it's a total loss, then you're going to ultimately get some valuation, which you can look up. You know, you have the blue book and different parameters there that you can look at those to see what the fair market value is of your vehicle. So that's usually fairly straightforward and easily to discern and interpret. When you get to the injury claim, it's not as easy because there's not a Kelly book that has what a good-looking uninjured Ted or Les is worth, or whomever has been injured.
Not a lot.
So that's where it requires the expertise of someone like us to help you understand what the valuation is. And they don't, and very frequently they're going to give you an offer that's just going to be a lump sum number, and they're not going to articulate out how they are arriving at that. But what they have to do in valuing that claim is look at it like in the eyes of what a jury would ultimately determine. And there's 3 main categories or elements of damages that are factored into a value of a claim. You're going to have your medical expenses to the extent they've been incurred, and to the extent they will be incurred in the future if you have medical testimony that would establish more likely than not you're going to need it. Then you'll have the wages that the individual lost. That's the person that was hurt. There were some questions there about the parent. The parent's lost time and things along those lines are not typically going to be something that's included. There's some situations when you're dealing with a major loss where you can potentially have some what's called like a filial consortium that can potentially factor in, but in this accident it does not sound like that would be something that would be a major component. And then if we're dealing, like in this case with an auto accident, if you have what is medically determined to be a permanent injury, or there's also scarring and disfigurement, there's several categories under the statute. If you meet that level of injury, then you can recover for what's called non-economic damages, the pain, the suffering, the mental anguish, the loss of enjoyment of life, the things you can't do or it's more difficult to do now when suffering from the injuries that you have from the accident. So all of those have to be factored in. And for something, you know, one thing that was mentioned in your time, but the individual's time, you need to properly document that, get the pay stubs, the wages, what they're being, the time they're missed. And it's important that that gets packaged up and presented to the insurance company properly, so that you can make sure that they're taking in all of those elements of the damages. And then you got to question them when they give you the offer, what is it based off? What are you considering? And you push and pull, and we have experience. We deal with these claims every day. We have a very good awareness of what claims, depending on what treatment you have, the nature of the collision, all of these go into factoring how that claim should be valued, because you're looking at it through the prism of, if you don't get it resolved, what would a jury do with it? And so it's very difficult to try to do that assessment on your own when you get into the injury realm. Property damage, many times that's something you should be able to take care of on your own, and it's usually, while it can be frustrating, it's usually a fairly straightforward, understandable process.
Right. Really, the way Ted described it, there's really 2 types of damages when you're talking about injury claims. You have your economic damages, which are things you can put a price tag on, a medical bill, a wage slip showing how much you make at your job. Items that were damaged in your car, your vehicle, your cell phone that was smashed when the wreck happened. Those are all economic damages because you can put a price tag on them. But you can't really put a price tag on pain or inconvenience or mental anguish or things, the non-economic damages type of category of damages. And so that's really, it's left up to a jury. What would a jury award? And it becomes so much more than just what's the nature of the injury. It's how does that injury affect your life? How does that injury affect your ability to go and do the things you like to do? Does your injury keep you from being able to get a good night's sleep every night? Does your injury keep you from being able to get out and play football or throw the baseball with your kids? Does it keep you from being able to walk up and down stairs? These are all sorts of things that we don't think about,
Right.
but it's something we do every single day. I mean, imagine, you get up in the morning, you walk to the bathroom, you brush your teeth, you take a shower, you wash your hair. What if you couldn't do those things because you have an injury? And we're talking about things that really impact people's lives, which is it the end of the world? Are they going to keel over and die right then? Probably not. But it's something that is constant. It's every single day, and there's a value to that. And then the problem, like you said, is there's no formula for it. It's not like a jury pulls out a little book and says, okay, a rotator cuff injury and this and this and this much money. It's not like that. It really just depends on the individual circumstances, which is really why you need an attorney that can help translate that information to a jury so they can kind of understand it in a real world context. We have a rule in jury trials. We're not allowed to ask a jury, what would you do if this was you? What would you do if this was your husband or your wife or your child? It's something we call the golden rule. You're not allowed to put the jury. However, you've tried a lot of cases. I've tried a lot of cases. I mean, between us, we've got pushing 50 years worth of experience, doing this type of work. And we know that every single jury thinks about it that way. So our job is to make sure they understand that this is, they talk about it's personal injury. It's the injury to you that makes it personal. And that's why you really need a skilled attorney that can come in and understand those nuances, understand a way to relay that information so that a jury gives you the maximum
Paint
compensation.
that picture so they can understand what you deal with. And because the point is to try to get you, to compensate you like you would have been before the accident.
Right,
And so that gets difficult depending on how many factors you have. And so you just got to make sure you get that image and that information properly to the insurance company. And if they don't analyze it and evaluate it properly, that's when we file suit and proceed through that process.
That's right. The first part of Clark's question, though, when he talked about the property damage, and you hit on it a little bit where you said, sometimes vehicles are damaged and they can be repaired, and sometimes vehicles are damaged and they can maybe be repaired, but the cost to repair the vehicle ends up being such that, if the vehicle's worth $5,000, why would you pay $5,000 to fix a $5,000 vehicle?
Right.
And in that situation, or if the damage is just, it's completely undrivable, bent frame, airbags deployed, windows busted out, doors don't open, probably no matter how valuable the vehicle is, it's probably something that an insurance company would declare a total loss. Now, depending on, because most claims, most accidents, most of them, property damage is the most common claim, which is probably why if you look on your policy and you look at the premium that they charge for the different coverages, bodily injury liability, uninsured motorist coverage, property damage liability, you'll probably notice that your property damage liability coverage is one of the most expensive.
Right, per dollar value.
Per dollar value, because it's the most common claim. Think of fender benders in the parking lot, side swipes, something you walk out from, you've been at the movie and you walk out and somebody's dinged your door. All of these go into the property damage. So, what is an insurance company responsible for doing if your vehicle can be repaired? Right? You're going to be without it for a time period, but what is the insurance company responsible to do at a minimum?
At a minimum, they have to put that car back into the position it was before that particular accident. Now, that if you're talking about a fender bender, that's likely just the repair and replacement of the vehicle. Now, if you do not have rental car coverage, depending on the dynamics of the situation, you may be without the ability to have that under your coverage. On a liability claim, that's something you could still pursue against the other, the at-fault parties, because then you have the situation of, are you going under your own policy, under the comprehensive or collision portion, or are you going under the liability property damage of the person that caused the accident? But if you get into a situation where you're talking about more significant damage, there is, in addition to the damage of repairing the vehicle, assuming it can be repaired without getting into the total loss scenario, there's another element that you can have of diminution in value. Because everyone knows once your vehicle has been severely damaged, that's a ding on your Carfax, that's going to be a ding on the resale of the
Right.
vehicle. Now, those are not easy to pursue, but that is something that can be looked into
Right.
and is an avenue or an element of the damages that
Yeah.
you can recover.
If you know who damaged your car and they have liability coverage, at a minimum, you're going to get your car fixed.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to be put in a rental car while your car is unavailable, or they're going to pay you for the loss of use, which was the cost to rent a car.
During that period.
And then the diminished value is a third component, which insurance companies typically don't tell you about. But it is a recoverable damage. If you have a pretty significant damage
Right.
to your vehicle, diminished value is something you absolutely want to inquire about.
And it's also going to matter about how valuable the vehicle is,
Sure.
whether or not that's going to read something that's really going to
Exactly.
move the needle or
exactly.
not.
But that's something that obviously we can always walk you through.